What are some very creepy facts? Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Is she ready to go to the embalmers? No, she's still pretty sexy. After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no antivenin, and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. Cone snails are pretty freaky. Some of the most deadly ones can kill you in 30 minutes or less after they sting you. Their shells are super pretty too, so any beachcomber should be aware of these creatures and know how to pick up a shell carefully just in case someone might still be inside. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. That's actually pretty neat. I'd like to subscribe to Crow Facts, thanks. Blobfish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish. It has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. Here's a comparison pic. 30A holy cow, thanks for the awards. And wow, like 50 people drew a connection to Made in Abyss. Never even heard of it before, but maybe I'll check it out now. When you happen to be murdered, there is only an about 40% chance that your murderer will be found and punished. Edit. A lot of people are asking which country I'm referring to. This is a worldwide approximation. There are obviously countries with higher percentages of solved murder cases, but also some with even lower. For example, in the US there is a 40% chance to get away with murder. In Mexico 90% to get away with it. Organized crime, the overall amount of crimes in that area and war plays a huge role in this. Thanks for the encouragement. Locusts aren't a type of animal. They're a condition some grasshoppers experience. Many species of grasshoppers become locusts when they're too crowded. Literally their legs rubbing together triggers the change. Once grasshoppers start to swarm, they will join up with others, physically grow larger, change color, and eat basically anything they find. Most of a swarm will be born as part of the swarm. Increased mating is part of swarm behavior. This is why it often seems like locust swarms come out of nowhere. Edit. Whoa, this blew up. Thank you for the awards, kind strangers. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert and my Wikipedia level understanding was super lacking for a post with this many eyes on it. Here are some corrections that have been brought to my attention in the comments. A very small percent of grasshopper species swarm, and not all those that do undergo physical changes. Your garden variety grasshopper is probably harmless. Especially if you're in Nan where there's only one species that swarms and it's super rare. Grasshoppers who do swarm are often called locusts even when not swarming. It's less of a grasshoppers catch locust situation, and more of a there are a subset of grasshoppers called locusts who swarm. Thank you to everyone who pointed out mistakes in my original. Add in the amount of calories they need to stay airborne, and in addition to devouring acres upon acres of crops, they also cannibalize each other in the air. If you begin to display symptoms of rabies, you will go crazy and die. There's no cure. Your brain will slowly melt until you're dead. The second you get bitten by anything, you should literally speed to the hospital. Serial killer Richard Chase took any unlocked door as an invitation to come inside. Like he thought he was a vampire. This is also not the worst fact about this case. In the US, if someone is kidnapped and not found within about a day, then there is a 97% chance the kidnapped person is dead, and 3/4 of them are killed within the first 3 hours of their abduction. That's why it's so important to go the police right away, and for the cops to actually act immediately instead of waiting 24/48/72 hours. Edit. I'm not sure where that myth of wait X hours to notify the police came from, but I've heard so many missing persons cases where the police wouldn't act for a day or two unless there was serious evidence of foul play because they are an adult and it's not illegal for an adult to go missing. Or the teenager is with friends somewhere. Or they're a runaway. Children under the age of 12 always get priority, but older ones tend to come with excuses. Valuable time wasted leads to valuable lives wasted. Open bracket. Crocodiles can gallop like a horse. I don't like knowing this, so I'm cursing you people with this knowledge as well. Fortunately alligators cannot, so that's how you tell them apart. Men who are hanged get a death erection known as rigor erectus. Pretty awkward for the family. This is the one time I'd advocate using hung instead of hanged. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue, and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. As a fish, there isn't a cure and it sucks. I keep saying stuff I don't mean to say. A black mamba is the fastest snake which can slither at a speed of 5 miles an hour, 20 km/h. They have neurotoxins which are fast acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, there is an almost 100% kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. When I went on a safari, the guide had no problem driving by the family of lions, cougars, crazy hippos, everything else we saw. However, when he spotted a black mamba, this incredible fear came over his face. The snake was right in the middle of the dirt road and he wouldn't even drive past it. We were in one of those open Jeep safari things. The guide was so frightened that he just zoomed in reverse and got away so quickly. He said they can jump up in the car and do all kinds of crazy things. I don't know if that's true, but I know that he was genuinely afraid and we got out of that area so fast. Tarantulas can swim. I'm afraid to Google this. If you live to age 70 you will have shed around 105 pounds of skin. Edit, because most seem confused. I mean over time, not all at once. That would be terrible. Cool. At least there's one thing to look forward to when I'm 70. Can't wait to freak everyone out when it happens. When creating the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, they couldn't create skeletons that looked realistic enough, so they used real human skeletons. They've since removed all of them except one. The skull that's over the bed is real. My favorite ride. It wasn't until 1987 that the American Academy of Pediatrics declared it unethical to operate on newborns without anesthesia. Until surprisingly recently, the medical community felt it would be dangerous to give infants anesthesia and/or believed that they didn't feel pain. Boston Globe. Thank God I was born in 1987. Ducks become cannibals due to boredom. Of all ducking reasons, they can only be stopped by cutting off their mouths. Duck with ducks. It was once discovered that a fir tree was growing inside a human body. Artyom Sidorkin went to the doctor suspecting something wrong with his lungs. The doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but turns out he had inhaled a fir tree seed which had sprouted and had begun growing in his lungs. Edit. Wow, so Grey's Anatomy is a popular show. I'm sure this was the inspiration for that episode. He also had a watermelon and a gum tree in there. Cockroaches have been recorded eating human flesh, both living and dead, as well as fingernails, eyelashes, feet, and hands. The American cockroach and German cockroach are more likely to bite humans than other species. Pretty sure Australian cockroaches do something equally creepy, but as an Australian who plans to sleep at some point in the future, I'm not going to Google it. I've actually been bitten by one before. It was freaky and weird. I was driving home one night when I felt something start to crawl up my leg. I couldn't see what it was in the dark, and I had to wait a bit before I could safely pull over and remove it. Somehow I was able to contain my fear and keep my legs still as it slowly climbed higher. When it reached my knee I felt a sudden, intense pain. Thinking I was being bitten by a spider, I tried not to panic and pulled over immediately. I practically ripped the switch off the dome light, flipping it on. Imagine my surprise when I saw a huge cockroach gnawing on my knee. I'm guessing it got trapped in my car at some point and was starving from the lack of food. I flipped it off, squashed it and rushed home to put antiseptic on the wound. Luckily it never got infected. So yeah, roaches can eat you. There was a speech made for Apollo 11 if they were to die on the moon. Side fact, if it were to happen, people would look up at the moon knowing that crew died there and their bodies would rest there till the end of time. Not forgetting that the ocean is somewhat like this. Many people died there too, at the very depths of the sea. Also, their bodies would not have decomposed because the moon has no oxygen. Instead they would become mummies. People don't take their anti-malarial drugs when they travel because they hear bad stories about the side effects and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. The truth is, populations native to malaria endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst effects. Also, most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the antimalarials, getting it is so much worse. I, fortunately, have never had it, but I study it as part of my work and people have told me about having it, and they all say the same thing. It is so awful you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours, and each cycle is agonizing and brings you the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you, sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that, even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system and can come back at any time. Edit. I don't want to freak people out too much. There are drug combinations that can kill every stage of the parasite as long as there is no drug resistance. We lost our anti-malarial drugs for a period of 2 weeks when we visited India about 20 years ago. I was hospitalized with malaria 9 months after we came back. Edit. I need to clarify that I was hospitalized after being back in the US for 9 months. I spent a month in the hospital. Sorry for the confusion. It's quite common after you die to burp a lot as you have more gas buildup. Dead bodies can also sit up on their own sometimes. Also, if a pregnant lady dies, sometimes the gas buildup in the body as it decomposes forcefully pushes the baby out. Most people smell different when they're awake. That's my favorite thing to whisper. Mount Everest is covered in frozen corpses because removing them is very unsafe and time consuming. They are easily viewed from the climbing routes and some are used as trail markers. What's odd is that, although the bodies are prominent, in some cases there is no consensus on their identity. Like over the years 2 different people with a similar description didn't return from their Everest climb, and we know the body is probably one of them, but not sure which. Or is it more creepy that some of the bodies are indeed identified, and somewhere out there is a family who knows full well that their loved one's remains are a landmark on the world's most famous mountain? Imagine being totally aware of someone performing CPR, but you physically can't move or respond. Well, that's what happens when you get bitten by a blue-ringed octopus. You have approximate 6 minutes between being bitten and someone starting CPR to keep your heart and lungs functioning to ensure you survive, all whilst being totally aware of what is happening to you. Neurotoxins are fun. The really creepy thing about this is one story of a guy who got stung, got CPR performed on him and survived, but went blind because he was lying on his back, eyes open, unable to blink because of the paralysis, staring into the sun. Imagine lying there, unable to move, unable to communicate, the sun slowly burning out your eyes and you can't shut them. There are upwards of 300 active serial killers in the world. Seems low honestly. 300 is a lot, but out of 8 billion? Famous last words though. Hearing is the last thing to go after you die. You just might hear the paramedics and firefighters call off CPR. You know, that's actually kinda nice. You know that if ever you have someone dying in your arms, they're hearing you as they die. You know comforting them is working, unless they have hearing damage. A single tiger has killed over 436 people in India. How many has a married tiger killed? Dolphins are ducking monsters, and although this one isn't as creepy as other comments, but gangs of male dolphins can trap a female, slap her around with their tails, and forcibly duck her for weeks. Dolphins are ducked up, man. They also kill calves, so the female will become fertile faster. And they also practice killing calves by killing young porpoises and seals. Or maybe that's just for fun. Human brains when they dry out smell like cat piss, that stinky ammonia smell. Worked in an ER for 17 years in court. Had a gunshot to the head come in, and a chunk fell onto my shoe and didn't notice. While driving home was like, WTF, did my cat piss in the car or something? Went to take my shoes off and there was / edit for all you people with morbid curiosity. Fresh brains look like cream cheese mixed with strawberry jam / edit too. No, they died. Trans life harvested organs. Hey buddy, I think you stepped in some brain matter. Sometimes an Amber Alert causes kidnappers to panic and kill the kid immediately. Edit, for those that don't know what an Amber Alert is. OJP, wow, this got way more attention than I expected. This is very rare and most of the time Amber Alerts are issued for kids taken by an estranged family member where the kid is in no danger. Amber Alerts have also saved hundreds of lives. For those that keep asking for a source. Yeah, too sorry for bumming y'all out. Oh god, I did not need this right now. Just got an Amber Alert for a little 1-year-old girl. Edit, I'm stupid, I read the alert wrong and it's a boy. I really need to sleep. And yes, I'm in Alabama for those asking. Edit 2, since I had a couple people ask, a missing boy is just as important as a missing girl. Apologies for making the boy seem less important. Any missing child is deserving of help, no matter the gender. Half of your favorite 70s rock stars had 14-year-old girlfriends == edit. Wow, I have been a Redditor for over 8 years. My previous highest comment was less than 200 upvotes, and I finally get to say it, RIP inbox. Edit 2, yes, I realize your favorite rockstar might not have been /be a pedo /creep, but I was so disappointed to find out how many were. I hope society is moving past where this is seen as remotely okay. But then again, people still work with Roman Polanski, and he was actually convicted of drugging and raping a 13-year-old. Duck him. 13 to 14-year-olds are children. Protect children. Don't sexualize them. It's not that hard. Edit 3. Enjoying the artistic work of bad people is an interesting issue. I still listen to lots of the music in question, but I don't think I would if these were active artists, and it was known I wasn't alive in the 70s. And I certainly don't support them financially, well, any more than Spotify plays, so I guess I do to some degree. In Polanski's case, I have seen some of his older movies, but never paid for one. I wouldn't support him financially in any way and I wouldn't watch anything he makes at this point. I think it was Aziz Ansari who had an interesting bit asking the audience who still listens to R. Kelly, not a lot of hands. Then later in the set, asked who still listens to Michael Jackson, lots of hands and cheers. I think there is an issue of perceived guilt, and also of artistic quality, that plays into people's feelings. Regardless, I don't believe you should actively support known predators. Probably more than half. Elmer McCurdy was a failed Old West outlaw. His preserved body was put on display in a traveling carnival and years later he was eventually ormed to be mannequin, until he was used on set for the TV show The $6 Million Man. His arm accidentally fell off during the shoot, revealing bone and muscle, and that he was a corpse, not a mannequin. Police were called, and the mummified corpse was taken to the Los Angeles coroner's office. On December 9th, Drive. Joseph Choi conducted an autopsy and determined that the body was that of a human male who had died of a gunshot wound to the chest. The body was completely petrified, covered in wax, and had been covered with layers of phosphorus paint. It weighed approximately 50 pounds, 23 kilograms, and was 63 inches, 160 centimeters, in height. Some hair was still visible on the sides and back of the head while the ears, big toes and fingers were missing. The examination also revealed incisions from his original autopsy and embalming. Tests conducted on the tissue showed the presence of arsenic, which was a component of embalming fluid until the late 1920s, so for anyone wondering how they didn't know the corpse was real, it was because it was a corpse covered in wax, to look like a wax dummy. Sense of impending doom is an actual symptom that often precedes your death, usually in cases of heart attack. Very creepy for some of us that suffer from anxiety and panic attacks to begin with. Both share that symptom. Edit. As many of you are pointing out, yes, I used preclude incorrectly. // I have a heart condition, and sometimes I'll feel a weird beat. Then I will feel that horrible sense of impending doom. It is such a horrible feeling. The stonerfish, an incredibly venomous fish living in tropical waters mostly off the coast of Australia and parts of US, can cause pain that only escalates with time. Eventually the pain will subside, but even after the barb is removed, patients have reported increasing pain 12+ hours later. Without antivenom or denaturing the venom with excessive heat, the pain builds and builds until the patients request euthanasia. Its spines hold the venom, hidden in its dorsal fins. Aboriginals living around the Great Barrier Reef have corroborees, large gatherings, and will during these gatherings hold reenactments of people being stung by this monster, for what I assume is either amusement, learning, or both. Edit. Corroboree clarification. Edit 2. Pain does eventually end. Reminded of Suicide Tree, where pain does not. Terrible leaves for toilet paper. Thank you for all the upvotes. So glad one of my parents' horror stories from Australia is so well received. I can attest to this. I was scuba diving in the Galapagos through a Discover Scuba thing because I'm not actually certified. I was with a guide who explained what all the hand signals meant before we went on the dive, but when we went down, I obviously forgot everything because I was having a great time and he made a weird hand signal, so I decided to stop swimming and put my hand on a piece of coral to stabilize myself. It was a stonerfish and let me tell you, it hurts very bad. I'm honestly grateful I made it to the surface without pawing out and spitting out the mouthpiece underwater. I did end up pawing out on the boat back to the hospital and woke up with a nasty headache and still some pain in my hand. All I'm left with now is a scar and a cool story. Edit. This is my first comment that has ever blown up. Lol. I will try to answer as many replies as possible. There's a spider that gives you a 3H long boner before you die from its bite. Edit. The boner it gives you is very painful. Die hard. They used real corpses in the 1982 film Poltergeist for the ending pool scene. The actress did not know until after the scene was filmed. Not just Poltergeist, but up until the last few decades actual skeletons and bodies were used in Hollywood productions simply because it was cheaper than hiring prop guys to do it. Any old movie you watch, chances are the skeletons are real, because you could saunter into any old medical supply store and buy a whole disused skeleton from a university medical department for a reasonable price. CNN has had a pre-recorded broadcast from the 90s which they will premiere during the end of the world. Since 2007, at least 20 detached human feet have been found on the coasts of the Salish Sea, and then there's the hands with 27 pairs of them. Of course, Kira is the first comment on the post. From Atlas Obscura by Fodder, Thuris, and Morton, necropants, reader's discretion advised. In Iceland, a longer time ago, 17th C, friends followed complex rules to obtain a dead man's skin to turn them into pants. 1. You had to get permission from the dude to use his skin after he kicked the bucket. 2. You would then wait until burial formalities concluded. 3. You would rob the chiz out of your buddy's grave. 4. You would cut the waist and peel the bottom half of the body off in one perfect flay. 5. You would then steal a coin from a poor widow, preferably your butts. 6. Place the coin in the scrotum of the necropants to attract cosmic chiz, specifically more wealth in life, and leave the groin full of coins at all times. 7. Par that chiz down to your kid. Fun fact, the Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft has a pair on display for all of us sickos to gawk at. Edit. Steal a coin additional. You are right, it's folklore. What is creepy is that they dedicated a museum to all of this ducking metal folklore and bothered to create a replica of a very disturbing idea. I just thought the storytelling would be fun, and lo and behold, I had some amazing comments come from it. Necropants had me laughing, but it was downhill from there. Some species of spitterlings eat their mothers alive. The Nazi-No affair. For those who don't want to read the ducked up details, in Stalin's Russia, 6,700 people were sent to live in a work camp on an island in a remote part of Russia. They had no supplies, shelter, or tools, and if they tried to leave the island they were shot and killed by Russian soldiers. It took less than 2 months before the people on the island, in their desperation, gave in to a cannibalistic holocaust. Over 4,000 people were killed or went missing in that time. In the end only 300 people made it off the island in one piece. It wasn't until the late 80s that a world tribune even found out the gruesome details of what went on there. Edit. Someone pointed out the source I linked isn't the best, so here's one with better citations and links to more content on the subject. HNet. Just to clarify, there were 2,200 survivors. Just 300 of them were fit for work. There are more creatures in your mouth than there are people on Earth. There are more cells of foreign creatures in and on your body than there are of your own cells. The astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger most likely didn't die until they hit the water miles below the initial explosion. Astronaut and NASA lead accident investigator Robert Overmyer said, "I not only flew with Rick Scobie, STS-51L commander, we owned a plane together, and I know Scob did everything he could to save his crew. Scob fought for any and every edge to survive. He flew that ship without wings all the way down. They were alive." I once read that you should play dead if a bear attacks you, unless they start licking your wounds, because that means they plan to eat you. That still haunts me to this day. Edit. If it helps, I'm pretty sure I was reading about grizzly bears at the time during one of my fevered grizzly man rabbit holes. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, grizzly, lie down. Pigs will eat anything. There are stories of pigs entering farmhouses and eating newborn humans. There was a serial killer, Robert Picton, in British Columbia, Canada, that owned a pig farm. It is believed he used the pigs to get rid of the bodies. He was only charged with 6 or 7, but there were likely dozens missing people. After raping his blindfolded victims, the Golden State Killer would be super duper quiet and pretend like he was gone. And right when the poor victims would start to move towards the phone or try to untie themselves, he would scare the ducking chiz out of them. After listening to the many hours of his crimes being listened in court today, this is just a cherry on the horrible cake that is D'Angelo. More than 7,000 people die annually due to the doctor's bad handwriting. Edit. I didn't expect this to blow up so much, so if you upvoted my comment, thanks so much. That doctor needs to start typing or something. Ridiculous. The human body can be drained of blood in 6 seconds given adequate vacuuming systems. Not everyone can afford a Dyson. Anything to do with parasitic wasps. I was thinking parasitic spores. Even creepier what ducking spores can do. In the Czech Republic, there is a church called the Sedle Košuary that has decorations made entirely of human bones. This happened because there were too many people in the cemetery to bury everyone, and the church leaders claimed that if their bones became part of the church, it only made them closer to God. Nice propaganda spin there, guys. I've been there. It's not creepy at all. Although I was 10, but I thought it was pretty cool. The men of the ship Essex, the true event that inspires the story Moby Rick, avoided islands after being shipwrecked for fear of cannibals. The islands were settled, and landing there would have brought salvation to the survivors. Ironically, because of this viper, the men ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. You know what's even creepier? 2 of the sailors were later rescued by an American ship. They were alone at sea for so long and had to cannibalize their crewmates to survive. When they saw their rescuers, they immediately stashed bones in their pockets. They didn't seem to care that they were rescued. They were obsessed with the bones of their fallen crewmates, so they can suck on the bone marrows. Even after they were on board the ship, they refused to depart from the bones, and would even attack anyone who would come close. Jeffrey Dahmer tried to make sex zombies out of some of his victims by drilling holes in their heads while they were still alive and pouring acid into the holes. That's not how you make zombies. A bubble caused by false vacuum decay could be expanding through our galaxy right now, destroying everything it touches. And we wouldn't even know about it, because it travels at the speed of light. Edit. To all the people who I've given existential dread with this comment, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking of it as scary as much as just creepy. And as others have pointed out already, it's hypothetical at this point. So try not to work about it. Close bracket. Deleted. Every year you live through the future anniversary of your death. Edit. Didn't expect this to blow up. Now people hate me. Not if I die on February 29th, you son of a bitch. Eventually there will be more dead people on Facebook than alive. Wow, thanks for the award. I always find it creepy yet fascinating, the idea that soon we will have this autobiographical look into people's lives whom we never have even met, simply because of their online presence. Imagine a day when you could show your kids your grandparents' Facebook or Instagram account and be like you never knew them, but this is what they were like. An elephant masturbates by slapping its penis on itself. Don't we all? Unborn babies have a layer of hair around them to regulate body temperature, called lanugo. They shed it, eat it, then poop it out after birth. Edit. Wow, thanks for the upvotes. I was trying to get some comment karma so I could post my GoFundMe on a separate Reddit. Now I can. People who are anorexic can also develop lanugo. It's the body's last-ditch effort to keep itself warm enough to function after it has lost its fat layers. The origins of vampires as we know them. Basically your body has gas buildup when you die. I'm not medically inclined enough to explain why. Basically the gas has to escape somehow, and so it would pass through the vocal cords in the throat. This creates the low moan that makes the body sound as if it was in pain. The people back then had no idea what was happening and random bodies would just start moaning in pain. And thus they believed that the bodies were rising from the dead. And when stabbed, the gas escaped otherwise. Thus leading to the belief that the only way to stop a vampire was to stab a dead body in the chest. This also led to a lot of strange burials, i.e. the man that was buried in a stone wall to prevent him from rising from the dead. I can't really blame them. I'd be freaked out too if a corpse suddenly started to make sounds. Creepy for some, but I find stuff like that fascinating. There's documentaries on it talking about it. I highly recommend them. Edit. Words cannot describe how happy I'm that so many of you provided additional facts. I'm having a blast reading your comments. I don't know much about this topic, and so it's great to have a place where more information and leads are constantly being shared. This is the documentary that I saw. Yeah, too, but there's a ton of others out there with more, possibly better, information. If you have any recommendations yourselves, please link them in your comment. I'd love to see them. Vampires don't moan. They say blah blah blah. You're more likely to be murdered by someone you know than a stranger. And the child molester is much more likely to already be in your house than lurking at the playground. This might not be very creepy, but there are no laws against cannibalism in the USA. You might be arrested for something else, but not for cannibalism. Edit. I would like to clarify that I'm in no way a practitioner of law. I don't know the specifics of what you would be arrested for. This was just a random fact floating in my brain. Edit 2. Most of the USA lacks these laws. It seems Idaho had some incidents, leading to them being the only state with anti-cannibalism laws. Thank you for informing me. You all know who you are. Most places have abuse of corpse laws that would cover cannibalism just like they cover dismemberment, wood chipping, or dipping in paraffin and turning into an eerily spot-on sculpture, or stuffing a body into a mattress and leaving it there while you hook up with your new sweet thing on top of it. If you stifle a sneeze, there's a chance you can damage organs in your head, including eye blood vessels, rupturing your eardrums, and possibly rupture a brain aneurysm, which means there's a small chance stifling a sneeze can kill you. Better to be the louder with the sneeze that can be heard around the world than a dead louder cause someone told you to stifle that sneeze. I almost always stifle my sneezes. According to Abe Lincoln's bodyguard Crook, he said Lincoln had a dream about his own urination 3 nights in a row before he was killed. Crook told Lincoln not to go on that fateful night, and all Lincoln said was goodbye, Crook, before he went to the play. This was very odd as Lincoln always said, good night not goodbye. The last witness to Lincoln's urination was interviewed on TV in the 1950s. Since 1900, over 13 000 people have been murdered by serial killers in the USA. The smell of a freshly cut lawn is actually a chemical distress signal released from the grass it's cut. You're smelling the souls and screaming of the innocent. No wonder I love the smell so much. Your brain can play tricks on you to make you see monsters in the mirror, called the Traxler effect. The Traxler effect is an optical illusion that affects how you perceive things, both visually and mentally. So that was the lady in my mirror. Chicken are so dumb they can accidentally peck each other, and if one of them feels meat in the other chicken, then all chickens will peck that chicken to death and eat it. My great grandma used to have chicken and pigs in her backyard, until one day the pig actually ate one of the chicken, and only left the feet. Albert Fish, the serial killer, loved eating poop. Edit, didn't expect Uncle Albert's peanut butter to blow up like this. Check out the podcast Time Suck. Biden Cummins has got an episode about Albert Fish and goes in depth about other serial killers in other episodes. I feel like that's the least creepy thing about Albert Fish. Either somebody knows where Malaysia Flight 370 went missing to, or nobody does. Both are equally terrifying. I still wonder to this day about this. Waiting for the discovery. A firewall can go as big as an F3 tornado. In 1923, such happened in Japan during an earthquake. The son of a bitch killed 38,000 people in less than 15 minutes. They got hit by a tornado that was on ducking fire. I in the middle of an earthquake. THAT caused a tsunami. ALL while surrounded by firestorms. That's some siffy superstorm chiz. Jesus Christ. Most dust is made of dead human skin and microscopic bunches. Edit. Also living dust mites. Edit. Apparently it's a myth that most dust is mostly made of all this stuff, and a quick Wikipedia search tells me that yeah, there is some human skin cells and hair but very little. You seem to be forgetting that the dust mites are alive and well in that dust. Our grades will be reused for someone else, unless we are memorable, which in the 99% of the time we won't be, so we better start thinking of better ways we can be buried. If we are cremated, then forget about being remembered past one generation, unless you name a park or building after yourself. This is why I'm going to be turned into a tree upon death. That should stand the test of time a bit better, and it feels more natural to become one with nature. Roach are natural burrowers. They also can't walk backwards. There have been cases where they burrow into people's ears, but cannot get themselves out. I had that happen to me before. I took a pair of tweezers, stuck it in just enough to open my earlobe up, and it crawled out. In 2015, a young woman began to have headaches. They discovered that she had a brain tumor, and when the doctors removed it, they were shocked to see that it was a lump resembling skin that contained bone, teeth, and hair. But this was no parasitic twin. The ma was called a teratoma, or monstrous tumor. When the woman was an embryo, some cell tissue fell off and ended up where wasn't supposed to be, her brain. It then developed hair and teeth, while the rest of her grew as normal. Edit. Holy ducking cheers. Over 50k upvotes. Thank you guys so much. My niece had one of those on an ovary. It had 3 teeth and some hair. It's less of a fact and more of an uncomfortable truth, but it would be very easy for a determined individual to break into your place of residence and kill you at just about any time that you aren't expecting them. Even worse is that, if they do it cleanly and have no relationship with you, they stand a decent chance of getting away with it. Edit. For clarity I said determined individual, because most normal locks, dogs, weapons, walls, fences, cameras, lights, etc. will be enough to deter thieves, or just some whack job. The point of my comment is to say that, if someone genuinely wants to get you, either they will, or they'll die trying, and odds are, if you aren't expecting it, the first thing is what will happen. Someone tried to break into my home once, when I was not there, but my dog started barking. Had the police come, do a survey, give suggestions on how to make my home more secure. They said at the end of the day, if someone wants in to break your home, they are going to. It is all about adding as many deterrents as possible. Lights, security alarm company stickers, £25 golden doodle. 1 in 100 people are psychopaths. Edit to AbSource. Psychopaths make up roughly 1% of the general adult male population. HTTPS I couldn't find a statistic for females in here, but it is slightly below 1%. Only did a quick search, but couldn't find a good source for women. It says around 0.3% for women, and the statistics within violent criminals also indicates that significantly fewer violent women are psychopaths. Note, not being a psychopath does not equal not being a horrible person. It's all covered in The Psychopath Whisperer, which, incidentally, is an insanely good book and highly recommended for anyone with a strong stomach. And somehow all of them are 13-year-olds on DeviantArt. John Harvey Kellogg was a prude, so he and his brother invented cornflakes and recommend cutting your foreskin to stop males from wanking. For females, he suggested rubbing carbolic acid on the clitoris, but fortunately that didn't catch on in the West. How did we get from cornflakes to wanking? Another creepy fact is that one can die from drinking water. It has to be 9 liters of water at once, and you are a dead man. Please don't try it. So we know the limit is 899 liters. Got it? At roughly 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, a body takes 2 to 4 hours to be ash. A good way to start a Thousand Suns army, I see. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.